Hello! Today we're going to be looking at radio navigation in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. So in front of us we have the stock Cessna 172 Skyhawk with the Garmin G1000 avionics kit that comes with the simulator. It really doesn't matter which aircraft or which avionics kit we're going to be using because the principles are the same regardless of what you're using. So we're going to have a look at flying between several radio beacons and even looking a little bit at ILS as well. So without further ado, let's go and get our aeroplane up and running, and then we can have a look at the instrumentation in the cockpit and look at the map. And then we'll get on our way and we'll actually demonstrate, which will be a lot easier than talking about it. So we've removed the engine covers, removed the static port cover, removed the pitot covers, removed the wheel chocks, and then go and jump in the aeroplane, and we'll turn the head tracking off for the moment just until we get everything up and running. Pop the yokes off. I'm going to go rich mixture. We're going to switch the fuel tanks to both, and then we're going to go and turn the standby battery on, and then turn the battery and the alternator on, turn the beacon light on. So I'm not following the full checklist today, we're just going to get the aeroplane up and running quickly. And let's go and crank the throttle open and turn the engine over and get it up to 1000 RPM to warm up. A little bit fast, but it'll do. Okay, so there's 1000 RPM, and then put the nav lights on, turn the avionics buses on now so we won't get any surges. So navigation screen is coming up, and we have the GPS has come up. So we are going to be flying by radio navigation today, but I thought it would be interesting just to pencil in the route on the GPS as well. So if you were watching yesterday's video that I released, I showed how to program the G1000. I'm just going to rattle through it quite quickly today without explaining absolutely everything. So here's the route we're going to be following. We're taking off from Denham. We're going to fly out to the Bovingdon VOR, then over to Brookmans Park, then Lambourne, and then we're going to intercept the ILS to come into London City. Okay, so it will give us enough, jumping in between VORs to talk about the kind of procedures you might follow and how the instrumentation works, and to have a little play with it along the way. Okay, so the first point of interest is where we're leaving from. EGLD is Denham. So we can go and roll the in and knob, click on the keyboard, EGLD. We're not going to bother putting the runways in because we just want the map. You don't have to put runways in. That's the real story there. EGLC is our destination, which is London City. So let's go and put that in and press enter. And then we want some en route waypoints. So Bovingdon is BNN. The Bovingdon VOR, and it's in the United Kingdom. The next waypoint is Brookmans Park, BPK. And press enter, and it's in the United Kingdom. And then the next waypoint will be the Lambourne VOR, which is LAM. Oh, let's type it in, it's quicker, isn't it? LAM. And we can see it's got the wrong one, but it's got duplicates, so we want the one that's in the UK. Press enter. And there we go. So there's our basic route put into the GPS. And you can see that roughly aligns with what we've got on the map here. Obviously, it's not quite right between Lambourne and London City. We'll be flying out and joining the ILS there. But it gives us some basics. So by default, when you jump into at least this aircraft, the guidance system will be defaulting to GPS mode. To switch it over to use radio navigation instead, so just to illustrate what this is actually showing, if you see our little aeroplane there on the map, it's pointing that way. So looking at this, the course to our first waypoint is kind of over our right shoulder, about 4:30, or between 4 and 5 o'clock, if you think in terms of a clock face. So that's what this is showing, look. The direction from us to the next waypoint is over our right shoulder at about 4 or 5 o'clock. and that's the GPS doing that. So it's interesting, this instrument is called a horizontal situation indicator, or HSI. So it's showing you where you are in terms of, or in the context of, the course to the next waypoint. So with the GPS you have no option, it is the course to the next waypoint. With radio navigation it's far more interesting. So to switch this out of GPS mode and into radio navigation mode, we press the CDI button. So CDI stands for Course Deviation Indicator. What that actually is this line in the middle of the instrument, which can move to either side of the course line. Okay, now when you're in GPS mode you can't change the course. So if you look over here, course is the triangle knob. So if we rotate that, nothing happens in GPS mode. If we change this, so I press CDI and it's gone to lock 1, which means basically the first localizer signal it is showing. So the nav radio is shown as a localizer in terms of your horizontal position. Okay, so where you are in terms of the course to the beacon is the localizer. So how is this different to GPS? Because it's still pointing between 4 and 5 o'clock, but we can change it. So we can spin this around to point any direction we like. And it's got no CDI at the moment because there is no radio beacon on 110.5. So let's have a little look up here and see what this actually means. We've got both nav radios up here and we can program the standby frequency for nav 1 or nav 2. Now we are looking at localizer 1, which corresponds with nav 1. We can switch this, so we can press CDI again and we've got localizer 2, which corresponds with nav 2. Notice when we do that, it changes the focus automatically, but we don't have to put up with what it says there. You can actually press the nav knob and change the other frequency yourself before you need it. So we're going to go over to nav 1. So at the moment we have no CDI, no course deviation indicator, because there's no signal. So it doesn't know where it is in relation to wherever the beacon is. If we go and look on our map, the Bovingdon VOR frequency is 11375. So let's go tune that in. So we've already got 113, so the outer ring is the integers. The inner ring is the decimals. So we just need to roll that backwards to get to 75. So to make this the active frequency, we press the button with 2 arrows. And you've suddenly got a course deviation indicator has shown up. So this is saying we are not on that course to the radio beacon. This is important and it will make much more sense when we're flying. But when we're in radio CDI mode or VOR CDI mode, we can change this. So we can rotate the course knob and look at that. We're tuning it in so the CDI is now in the middle. So what that means is the radio beacon, when this is in the middle, is at 330, 40, 50 degrees from us. So let's go and check that on the map. So if we were to draw a line on the map parallel to our track to the navigation beacon is 350 degrees. Okay, so that's one way of knowing exactly what direction the next beacon is. You can just rotate this until it's in the middle, and then you know the arrow is pointing straight at the beacon. Notice that we could spin this all the way round. So we could point it in the opposite direction and it would still line up, which is why there's a second arrow. If we point this in the opposite direction, the arrow will swap ends, so it will be pointing away from the end arrow, which means you're flying from the VOR, not to it. Or that's the direction from it, not to it. Okay, once we get in the air, it'll make a lot more sense. Also notice that says VOR 1 now instead of lock. So once it's got a frequency tuned in, and you can see it's identified up here as well, the station. Once it's tuned in, it changes to say VOR 1, not lock. Okay. Let's go and get in the air. So we're not going to worry too much about courses or anything like that to begin with. we'll just go and get the aeroplane in the air, and then we can worry about more things. So we'll go and put the taxi lights on, and we don't need strobes. Sorry, yeah, we don't need the pitot heat just yet. Let's pop the yoke back on. And let's go and have a little look at the airfield and see where we're going to taxi out to. So crosswind, about 10 knots. So we're going to do left turn and just go out to runway 24. So if we double back on ourselves slightly, we should find a taxiway. Just avoid some of these other aeroplanes that are parked up here. I will admit I've not flown out of Denham very often in the past, so this is new for me. There's quite a few helicopters here, aren't there? So we're just taking a bit of a shortcut out to the end of the runway across the grass. Okay, so we'll just put the parking brake on for a moment. Let's go and get the rest of the airplane ready. So strobe lights on, landing lights on, pitot heat on, and we're pretty much good to go. Just having a quick check around, make sure I haven't forgot anything disastrous. So one thing we can do, because we're going to be playing with the autopilot, which will free me up to talk, we're going to put the heading bug in the direction we are going. So I just pressed the heading bug and it flicks round. We can actually go and pre-arm heading mode on the autopilot, even though the autopilot isn't on yet. Yeah, so it's going to say, if we do engage it, it will be heading mode and pitch hold. Okay, parking brake off, full throttle, we won't need flaps, it's a lovely long runway here. So watching the indicated airspeed build. Rotate gently, and we're up. Keep an eye on the airspeed, make sure we don't get too slow on the climb out. I think best climb rate for a 172 is about 75 to 80 knots. So we'll let it accelerate out towards that. Okay, so I'm going to engage the autopilot so we can talk. So autopilot on, and we'll put altitude hold on for the moment. So the autopilot's doing a fairly poor job. Yeah, it wants to go higher. So let's turn off head tracking for a moment. We'll give it a target altitude of say 2,500 feet, and we'll say flight level change to get that, and we'll give it more power now. And you can see it's turning the extra power beyond our target airspeed. Let's increase that target airspeed as well to say 80 knots. If I can do it. So the airplane's happily climbing away now. It's a bit turbulent today, isn't it? But that's all the fun of the fair, isn't it? So, how do we know which direction we need to turn to get to the VOR from where we are? We can turn, remember, the course knob. So it's now further behind us than it was, because we're obviously travelling away from the original course. So we can just spin the heading bug around. You can see the course deviation indicator is moving, because we are flying at an angle to the track, or to the course we have chosen. So at the point we did it, we were about here, look. But we've gone off to one side because we overshot. So the aeroplane's trying to get to a heading bug, or the heading bug we set of exactly north by the look of it. The weather is throwing us around a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. But you can see the CDI is off to one side, and that means we're not on the course that we originally chose. Yeah, so the course we chose was 3 degrees. I've actually got 4 degrees here, but it's close enough. So if we wanted to be on the 3 degree line, or even the 4 degrees, so if we go 4 degrees, it's slightly off. Yeah, so that matches exactly what we've got here, 4 degrees into the VOR. So if we wanted to do that, all we would have to do is change our heading look. We've moved the heading bug in. We'll go a little bit more just so you see it happen. Watch the CDI. We're about to cross the 3 degree line. Or 4 degree line, sorry, here. We're about to cross the 4 degree line. Okay? So our original line was 350 degrees. Yeah? So let's go and change our course knob to 350. So we are now massively away from it. And we are, look, it's over here. It's to our right. But relative to our aeroplane, that's the angle it is relative to our aeroplane. Yeah, so if you think about rotating this screen around, that's that offset angle, and here it comes, look. So without looking at the map, we can change the heading bug as we get closer to the VOR line. I'm going to slow the engine down a bit, we're not in a hurry. So we can start turning the aeroplane towards the course that we want. So the huge change with using radio navigation is you get to choose the course that the instrumentation then shows you where you are relative to that course. So the course being relative to the radio beacon. So if we go and look at the map now, look, the CDI is in the middle and we're on the line, the 350 degree line towards the VOR. Now obviously we've got a slight crosswind from behind us and it's pushing us sideways to the right. So you can see the CDI is slowly drifting to the left because we are to the right now of the line. So we just steer towards it to bring it back in. So the real trick here, now let's put the distance measuring equipment on as well, which will be useful for you to see. So PFD options, we can switch on DME, and it shows you how far to the radio beacon as well. Should we switch the wind on as well? So we've now got the wind vector. So you know what wind is affecting us, so you might know how much to steer into it. So we're obviously using human judgment to do this. We don't have to, we can just press nav. But I'll do it, we're almost on top of the VOR. I want to show you what happens when you fly over it. So we're tracking pretty accurately to fly right over the top of it. So you can see the distance coming down. I just want to show you what happens. So watch the heading mode. Actually, it won't make a change because we're not tracking it. We'll do it on the next one. We'll be on nav mode when we hit the next one. But for this one, I just want to show you what happens. Look. So 1.2 miles away. Going to try and get it right over the top. We're 1 mile away, 0.8 miles away, 0.7. I'm wondering if we'll lose the signal when we're right over the top of it. We should do. 0.5 miles away. So it's just gone down, yeah, the CDI is gone. And now it's come back. The arrow has flipped. The VOR is now behind us. And we are flying away from it at 350 degrees. The VOR is at 170 degrees from us. Yeah? So if you were to draw a little line on here now, we've got a 170 degree line back towards the VOR station. Okay, so let's do an intercept course. We're going to turn to, we want to be leaving this VOR on an angle of 84 degrees. So we can change our course to 84 degrees. And obviously it's saying that the line is to our right now. So we're going to go and turn our heading. So we're turning the aeroplane. And you can see now the distance is getting bigger. We're flying away from the VOR. So it's now behind us, and the line, the 84 degree line, is to our right. So let's go and put ourselves on a pretty severe angle to get back in towards it, because we overshot by a long way while we were explaining things. So we're now coming back in at about a 30 degree angle towards the 84 degree course from the VOR at Bovingdon. Yeah, we're coming back in, look, at about a 30 degree angle to it. So to get it to track the line this time, we're not going to just use heading mode. We can also use nav mode. So if I hit nav, you'll see it's going to say both at the moment, which means it's not using VOR navigation, it's just using the heading. When it gets close enough, it will use the VOR and drop heading on the autopilot. Yeah, so at the moment you can see in bold yellow it's using heading mode, but you can have both. So I've said use nav mode if you can get or if you can capture it. That's the terminology that's used. If the guidance system can capture the signal or capture the course, it will do it. So you'll see the CDI come in shortly, because we're getting closer to the track. So this is representing the 84 degree course from Bovingdon. And we are flying towards it, and it's still to our right. We're not on top of it yet. Going to have a quick look at the map. You'll see we could look at the map in the simulator, of course, which would do the same thing. So you can see us coming back down towards the line. Yeah, so it's representing that offset angle across our nose, and here comes the CDI. So look, it's gone to VOR. It's actually turned into the line. It said, okay, I can see the CDI. I'm going to turn in at a much sharper angle, and then I'm going to turn left onto the track. So watch the flight director turn left. It's doing it very gently, isn't it? I thought it might do a much steeper turn. There it goes. So it's centering it up all on its own. So that's nav mode on the autopilot, which shows up as VOR if you're using radio navigation. Okay, so we are now flying away. We are 5.4 miles away from Bovingdon now, flying out just away on an 84 degree track. So this radio beacon knows nothing about where we are going. That's up to us. So we can tune in Brookmans Park now, 117.50. So we'll do that on the standby frequency. So we can leave this using the active frequency, and we can change the next one to 11750. So we changed the standby frequency, remember, so 11750. Now if we want to switch over, the safest thing to do, so the autopilot, well, we'll see what happens. If I just switch frequencies, watch what happens to the guidance mode. Ready? It's gone to roll hold mode. Yeah, it's a safeguard. So it didn't know, for that split second, it didn't know that it was going to be able to pick up a signal. So rather than say, okay, can I grab your new signal and then I'll guide on it, it's just gone to roll hold. So we have to press nav again. So now it's tracking 84 degrees, same course, but we're now 8 miles away from the Brookmans Park VOR. So it's just correcting itself. Look, it's in nav mode, so it's bringing itself onto the exact track. And if we go and have a look on the map, you can see here's the variability of navigation by radio. It's not the exact same track, look. Yeah, so they don't quite agree with each other. This one is showing us 85 degrees, look, once we get to this end. So that's, again, magnetic deviations and all that kind of stuff. It gets really interesting. Okay, so we can watch the DME now, because obviously we've tuned into the one that's in front of us. So the arrow here has flicked in front of us. If we switch back, VOR 1, see the arrow's gone to the other side? So that means we're back on Bovingdon. If we switch it back to Brookmans Park, the arrow flicks to in front of us instead of behind us. Notice though, because we switch frequency, we've lost our guidance, so we have to press nav again. And then it says VOR. Okay, so we have 6 miles to run until we get to Brookmans Park. So we could prepare the next frequency. So the Lambourne VOR is 11560. So should we do that on nav 2? So 11560, and we'll switch it to active. And it's confirmed it's Lambourne. So all we will need to do for guidance is to switch the CDI over. So we come back out of this menu where we were playing with the primary flight display. We can use the CDI button, so let's get rid of the yoke out of the way so we can actually see the soft key underneath it. So at the moment we're 4.5 miles away. When we get to about 1 mile away, we'll go back to heading mode, and we'll take the heading and the course to the direction we want to go. So we want to leave here on a course of 123 degrees. So remember, we could leave it tuned in to Bovingdon, and that actually will be quite a good thing to do. So what we'll do is align the heading bug with the direction we're pointing, so it's actually offsetting the wind itself, look. By tracking the VOR or the course to the VOR, it is offsetting the wind for us. So we could just go to heading mode. We're 3 miles away, so heading mode now. So it's just going to keep going this direction. I want to show you what happens to that VOR signal when we're right overhead. Just to see it one more time. So we're in good shape to go right over the top. If we did this with nav mode, it might actually, we'll see. As we get closer, this line may deviate a lot, because if you're obviously right on top of the VOR, only being a small amount to one side of it will indicate as a huge amount on the CDI, or the course deviation indicator. So you can see as we get closer, this is going to start swinging. But I want to show you it lose the signal and this go to roll hold. Okay, we're 1 mile away. 0.9, 0.7, 0.6, 0.5. So will it lose the signal when it's right over the top? Get ready. Gone. And it held on to it, which was miraculous. Doesn't always happen, and different aeroplanes and different guidance systems may behave in different ways. So it was just interesting to try that to see what happens. So we'll go back to heading mode, and we'll spin the heading round to the kind of course we know we need to be on for the next leg. So it was 123 degrees. Yeah, so we want the course So we're going to go and switch over, remember. We had 11560, didn't we? The Lambourne VOR. So let's change the CDI to using nav2 and change the course round. So if we wanted to go straight towards the Lambourne VOR, we can just spin this until the CDI is right in the middle, which it is at the moment, funnily enough. So that's a course of 125 degrees. We actually wanted 123 degrees. So if we go and just pull that back, so the line is slightly to our right, and that agrees with what we're seeing here. So we can either use the heading bug to turn towards the line to pull it towards the middle, or we just press nav. And if you're fairly close, it will do it itself. If you're not close enough, it won't. So it's going in at quite a steep angle actually. So you can see that the flight director's working overtime here, telling the aeroplane to bank left and right to make the turn. It's wobbling all over the place, look. So this is getting us back onto that 123 degree line towards Lambourne. But it's showing VOR2 here now, and we're tuned into Lambourne on nav2. Okay, so what's the significance of doing all of this with headings and courses? And the significance is we don't have to be flying on this track. If we wanted to come into Lambourne at a different angle, for whatever reason, say we wanted the 140 degree radial into Lambourne, all we need to do, we'll put this on heading mode, so it's going to go the direction it's already pointing at the moment. Let's go and change this to 140 degrees. So notice what it's showing now on the HSI. We need to turn left to get onto that 140 degree line. So let's do it. We'll put ourselves on an intercept angle with the CDI, or the course deviation indicator. Not too much of an angle because we'll need to turn back, remember. Notice the DME is showing nav1, not nav2, so that could throw you. You need to be careful about that. So you can do that in here. So if we go DME, look, you've got bearing 1 and bearing 2 as well. There's tons of stuff you can do in here. You just need to be careful. DME is only showing nav1. Anyway, so the bearing is showing you the actual direction straight to the beacon, regardless of what course you're using. Here comes the CDI. So when it gets a bit closer, we'll turn in towards it, and then we'll be flying at 140 degrees into the beacon. We know it's to the beacon because this arrow is the same direction as that one. So we're in heading mode, remember. This just allows us to easily show this very mechanically. So we're lining the CDI up with the HSI course. Or lining the course deviation indicator up in the middle of the course. So then when we go and look on the map, we are joining, look, our 140 degree line in. Now because of the crosswind that's pushing us sideways, we know we're going to have to counter that by quite a few degrees. We can see the wind here, look, pushing us this way hard, so we're falling to the left of the line. So we're going to turn into the wind. Now obviously the system can do this for us. We don't need to judge this ourselves. We can just press nav. So it's gone to VOR mode, it's tracking VOR2, and it's quite happily doing it. Yeah, so it's lining itself up very precisely. Okay, we'll go back to nav1 for when we leave here. So we want to leave Lambourne. So this is why it was important to show that you can go from a VOR, because we're not going to anywhere. Ignore that we're going to a waypoint. I've just used that as reference. We want to fly out away from a VOR for 9 miles. So we're going to be using a course and the distance measuring equipment to figure out where we are. Okay, so when we leave here, we need to be on the track of 162 degrees. So let's go back to heading mode for the moment, just so we can change the course ahead of time. We want 162 degrees. And let's go and put our nav1 onto the same frequency, so 11560, yeah? Just to show that you can do this sort of thing. So it's got the same frequency, so now we can change the Omni bearing selector, sorry, the CDI to VOR 1 now, and oh, it's got its own course, which is really great, isn't it? 162, wasn't it? So that's a really good pointer, actually, that they can be different courses than each other. 162 degrees, yeah. So here it comes. The CDI should come flying in any moment, and we're showing 0.6 miles away. It's going to be right underneath us. 0.5. Here comes the CDI. We're about to cross over it. We'll come out the other side. The CDI is back, but the arrow has changed ends. We're now going from the VOR, and the distance measuring equipment is increasing. And you can see that arrow is pointing straight at the VOR. So I switched that on via the PFD, the bearing 1 and bearing 2. Okay? So if I show bearing 1, it's chosen not to work now. Oh, it's suspended. Did I press OBS by any chance? That'll be why, yeah. Don't press OBS. I'll explain what that is another day. Okay, so we're coming in towards our line, so we're pretty lined up. So all we have to watch then is the distance here. So that's going to go out towards 9 miles. We know when we get to about 8 miles we want to turn right for the ILS. So ILS works the same in terms of lateral navigation. We just tune our radio to 111.15 in this case. So we'll tune our standby frequency over here to 111.15. When we get to 8 miles, we'll switch to it. So we're still flying heading mode. So we can go and change our course. In fact, we could change the navigation completely. But we'll leave it as it is for the moment, because it really doesn't matter if we overshoot. We've given ourselves a long way to run in. We're also going to come down to 2,000 feet, because we want to be underneath what's called the glide slope. And I'll explain that in a moment. So 2,000 feet, and we'll do flight level change to get there. We just pull the power, and then it will maintain 100 knots, or it'll try to, and bring us down to 2,000 feet. So the game we are playing here with the ILS is ILS will not only track where we are in our lateral position to the line or the course, it will also track our vertical position. So if you imagine this is a glide slope of 5.5 degrees, it's a steep one. So there is an imaginary line from the runway climbing through the sky that we will go down that line towards the runway. So I've come in at 2,000 feet, so if we were to fly in, the general rule of thumb, 5.5 degrees, you'd be looking at about 5,000 feet out here. So by being at 2,000 feet, we'll be well below that imaginary line. So if we switch over, I need to go and increase the engine again, don't I? We're getting a bit slow. You could see the autopilot was doing altitude hold at 2,000 feet. We had reduced revs to to prevent it accelerating too much. Of course, then it did altitude hold, and to keep us at 2,000 feet, it was gently raising the nose. So you can see there's the runway. So we're going to come over here, and you can see this is at 6 miles now. So a couple of miles time we'll turn right. So remember though, we could put this on nav 2 for the same reason we saw earlier, but I'm going to leave it on nav 1. All I was thinking that we could keep the distance measuring from nav 1, but do all of our actual pilotage, if you want to call it that, our navigation, based on nav 2. So then we get distance measuring from 1, and the horizontal situation, and very soon the vertical situation from nav 2. But we'll just stick on nav 1 because it makes it easier to think about. So we're going to switch over very soon to 111.15, which is the ILS frequency for the runway. Yeah, it's showing here 111.15. Okay, so we're coming towards 8 miles. So let's go and switch frequencies. 11115. Notice I don't have to set the course for ILS. Doesn't do any. Oh, it does do something. That's rather interesting. It needs to be 272 degrees anyway. So it defaulted itself. I didn't think it would move it. Some aeroplanes it doesn't. On this avionics kit it does. So 272 degrees is the center line of the runway direction. Okay. Notice we have a new gauge has appeared. So this is showing our position relative to the center line. So let's go and start turning towards an intercept angle that will bring us onto the center line of the runway. Okay, so we can press nav and it will track it. Notice it says lock because this is the localizer. It's not a VOR station anymore, it's the localizer. You can see the airports out there in front of us. Here's the glide slope. So this is the line we're going to fly down. So if you imagine, if I sit up slightly, there's the airport in front of us. There's a line through the sky and we're going to fly through it in a moment. When we fly through it, this diamond will fall. Well, so what the diamond means is that line through the sky is above us at the moment. When it falls down, we're getting closer and closer to it in exactly the same way that the CDI works. Yeah, so the CDI is now the localizer. Here it comes. So I am going to turn off the autopilot. We could go for approach mode, in which case we'll do it to begin with. I've engaged approach mode. Okay, so it says GS over here, and we'll pull the throttle back. And look what it's doing. It's chasing. So approach mode, the APR button is chasing the glide slope for us. So I'm going to turn the autopilot off because I want to fly to show you this. So let's go and turn head tracking on. So we can see there's the runway in front of us. We're about in the right place on the glide slope and we're on the center line. We can see that. Let's go off to one side. So you will see the localizer will slip to the right. So we are to the left of the center line now. Come back the other way. We're now to the right of the center line. Yeah, it says here. So you don't have to actually be able to see anything outside, and this is the real end game of learning to fly by instruments, and certainly for ILS, is you can land without being able to see anything until the last moment. So same principles, look, we can fly in towards bringing the CDI into the middle. There's the glide slope. So when it gets towards the middle, we dive. If we go too low, it goes above us. If we pull the nose up and go too high, it will fall below us. So when you're descending at about the right angle, You just chase it gently, make small adjustments. So we're within flaps range now. Let's go and put some flaps out. So obviously if we couldn't see the runway, we could still follow these instruments. And I have got several videos where I've done that just to demonstrate doing ILS blind landings, essentially, in awful weather conditions. And some people will say it's a terrible thing to demonstrate, but that's why simulators are so good, because you can kind of do the worst case scenarios and try them out. So obviously I'm visual with the runway. I really don't need the ILS to guide me in. But it is handy to know, you know, that you're in the right sort of space or the right place in the sky. It's really windy, look, we're almost being thrown off the runway. I'm having to remove the flaps so they don't pick up gusts and just get us down to a nice slow speed. So we're really on the limits today of the weather for a Cessna to operate in. It's interesting, I've never seen an Osprey regional before. I have no idea what the parking cost would be for a Cessna at London City. I imagine it would be the cost of a small house. Let's just scoot past him and go and quietly park our aeroplane and pretend we weren't here. We'll go underneath the tail of the A330. It's quite amusing, isn't it? We easily fit under here, look. And we've got a 737. Is that an Airbus the other side of him? Looks like it. Lufthansa. Condor. Is that an A321? It looks quite long, doesn't it? Yeah, there's a little A319 the other side of him, look. So here's the GA parking. I came off the runway a bit early, didn't I? But at least we got to do some sightseeing along the way. So let's go, and we really should have had the landing and the strobe lights off already. Should we go this side of him? Go and mow down the guy that's walking around minding his own business. He's about to get the fright of his life. So parking brake on. Let's go run the mixture down to clear the lines. Okay, we're cold and dark. So, I don't know, there was a set of stairs magic themselves into midair in front of us for a few seconds. So, hopefully you've enjoyed that today. So that was a look at radio navigation in the Cessna. Obviously, we crammed quite a lot in there, and I tried to show lots of different skills and different things you can practice. So flying two VORs, flying from VORs, playing with both Nav1 and Nav2 frequencies, so using both radios, and then shooting an ILS approach right at the end. And we showed, obviously, you know, coming in on approach mode and it doing it all for us, and then we switched over just to show the instrumentation as you come in, really. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed that. So that was a first steps with radio navigation. If you want to know more, I'll probably record some more videos. If there's any specific questions, do let me know, and I'll see if I can record some more sessions for anything very specific. I know people seem to be super interested in DME arcs. So doing approaches where the chart has a distance measuring arc, where you're flying a radius from a certain fix. So yeah, that's a good one, and we'll cover that at some point. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.